Tonight, pipeline reaction. Some BC First Nations say no to the idea. Puppy returned. A woman allegedly traded a missing dog for drugs, and restrictions lifted. The area order for the Kiskatinaw River wildfire is dropped. Well, good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with pushback to a new pipeline being proposed that would run from Alberta to BC's northern coast. The war of words between Premier David Eby and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is getting testier. Rob Buffum has the story and reaction from BC First Nations.
A news conference announcing a new school on Vancouver Island was dominated by a pitch for a new oil pipeline from Alberta to BC's northwest coast.
Proposals being advanced from Alberta are just that. They are sketched out on a piece of paper. There is no proponent. It is entirely taxpayer funded.
Eby, responding to news, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's government is formally applying to Ottawa's Major Projects Department for the new pipeline.
This is not just a question of Alberta's energy. It is a global moral imperative.
Smith has pushed the plan repeatedly, but now she's announced 3 private pipeline companies are consulting on the project. Her province has ponied up $14 million to fund the application, and she expects the feds to lift key obstacles, including emissions caps and the oil tanker ban on BC's coast. She's calling this moment a test of whether Canada works as a country.
Because if we can't build with collaboration of the federal government and between provinces, if it's everybody gets to get their products going to market except Alberta, that's not a country. A country is one where we support each other.
Coastal First Nations oppose lifting the tanker ban, don't want the pipeline, and say there's been no consultation.
They've put the cart before the horse. They've made an announcement before ever coming and having any conversations with us. That already shows a level of disrespect.
Asked about previous responses suggesting he was possibly open to a pipeline, Eby didn't mince words.
I am being polite. There is no project. There is no bridge to cross unless the Albertan government and the federal Canadian government are committing billions of taxpayer dollars to build this project. Don't mistake my politeness for weakness.
Smith fired back, politeness seemingly taking a back seat to escalating pipeline politics.
If we had been able to redraw the map at the founding of Alberta, maybe we would have drawn it with a little bit of British Columbia so that we had a port. Maybe Port of Prince Rupert would have been part of Alberta.
Robert Buffum, CTV News.
A missing puppy was returned to its owner by the Dawson Creek RCMP after it was allegedly traded for drugs. Mounties say a man came to the detachment telling officers his 2 dogs were missing. He located one of them, but then contacted the SPCA when he couldn't find the second one. Well, he was then provided a first name of a female who may have had the dog. Police then found a relative of one of the suspects and demanded the dog be returned. The puppy was turned over to police officers. RCMP say there's no evidence to support that the dog was actually stolen, therefore there's no ground to lay charges. Police do say the owner was absolutely thrilled to have his puppy back. The BC Wildfire Service says a small wildfire has been discovered northwest of Fort St. John. According to the service, the wildfire is listed as burning out of control. It says the half-acre fire may grow outside of its current perimeter. It's located at approximately 7 kilometers northwest of Charlie Lake. The Wildfire Service does suspect that the fire was human-caused. And the BC Wildfire Service has lifted the area restriction order for the Kiskatinaw River wildfire. The decision taking effect this morning at 10. The Kiskatinaw wildfire was discovered back on May the 28th. The blaze has grown to over 26,000 hectares in size and crossed the Alberta border in the summer. The Wildfire Service says lightning is the suspected cause, and it's reminding people to be cautious when traveling through the area for recreational purposes. And the service is urging people to immediately report smoke rising from any green, unburnt fuel. And some good news as well tonight from the Okanagan. Nearly all of the evacuation orders and alerts triggered by a wildfire near Peachland have now been lifted. There's just one address still on the evacuation order near an adventure park. The BC Wildfire Service has classified the Munro wildfire as being held, which means it's not expected to spread any further. There are currently just over 100 fires burning across the province, with only 5 listed as being out of control. 2 of those are burning north of Fort Nelson, near the Northwest Territories and BC border. Also in the Okanagan, after several tough years, many farmers are saying this growing season has been the best in decades, even record-breaking for some crops. The BC Fruit Growers Association is touting this season as the largest cherry crop in this province's history. While the final tally is still coming in, the association is calling this year phenomenal. Fruit farmers say the bumper crop is a stress response from trees after very few cherries were produced last year after a deep freeze. The former Vancouver Canuck is facing sexual assault allegations. The notice of civil claim details allegations against Stanley Cup champion Willie Mitchell while he was the general manager of a Tofino resort. The lawsuit claims he engaged in unwanted and unprotected sex with a 26-year-old woman at his home in September of 2022. Days after the alleged assault, Tofino Resort and Marina was brought under interim management, citing, quote, highly inappropriate behavior, unquote, during an event. The plaintiff, known as SDK, worked as a server on the property. After a shift 3 years ago, the claim says she joined co-workers at the resort's pub and became visibly impaired by alcohol. She alleges that Mitchell escorted her from the pub to his vehicle, brought her to his Tofino residence, and engaged in unprotected sexual activity without her express or implied consent. The defendants, which include Tofino Resort and Marina for negligence as commercial hosts, have not replied to the notice. According to the lawsuit, the plaintiff went to police and the hospital for a forensic examination the next day. She says the assault has caused a number of injuries, including flashbacks, reduced sense of self-worth, and a lower ability to enjoy a loving relationship. The plaintiff is seeking damages for the injuries suffered, which include lost earning capacity. The former Vancouver Canuck has never been charged, and the allegations from the claim have not yet been tested in a court of law. A BC Conservative staffer says she's been fired for her comments about the orange survivors flag at the BC legislature. Lindsay Shepherd, a communication officer with the party, faced backlash last week after she called the gesture fake and a disgrace on social media. Now, the flag is meant to honor those impacted by residential schools. Shepherd's comments echoed rhetoric used by Dallas Brody, a former Conservative MLA, who was fired from the party in March for mocking survivors. Well, a baby in Alberta has died from complications due to the measles. The update comes as there are now more than 1,900 cases of measles in that province this year. There are currently 152 people in hospital and another 15 Albertans in intensive care unit because of the illness. This is the second death from measles in Canada so far this year. And if you were in Fairview, Alberta on September the 27th, Alberta Health Services says there was a possible measles exposure there at the hospital. We're getting an update on the federal dental care program.
We announced that more than 5 million Canadians are currently covered under the Canadian Dental Care Plan.
Health Canada says nearly all dental providers are now taking part in the federal dental care program. The program launched in May of last year for seniors, children, and disability tax credit recipients. This year, it's expanded to all eligible Canadians. It covers basic dental work for uninsured people earning less than $90,000, with an average of an $800 covered per patient each year. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is pushing for the Liberals to get on board with his party's plans to reform Canada's bail system.
While people are dying on our streets, where our citizens are being massacred, while women are being killed by abusive ex-husbands, Mark Carney has spent 6 months spinning in circles, leaving Liberal laws in place. And he is personally responsible for the violence on our streets because it is him that is standing in the way of us fixing the problem.
The opposition leader is calling to fast-track a proposed Conservative bill being dubbed the Jail Not Bail Act. The bill would make judges consider the accused full criminal history. It would also make it harder for those who commit major offenses while on bail to receive bail again. The Liberals have indicated their own bail reform bill is in the works. And the federal government has launched a single procurement agency for its big defense purchases. The new Defense Investment Agency aims to cut red tape to get the Canadian Armed Forces the equipment it needs faster. CTV's Judy Trin now with what that means in context of a trade war with the United States.
Of all the billions of dollars Canada spends on military equipment, 75% of it goes to suppliers in the United States. A former fighter pilot turned politician says the new Defense Investment Agency will change that.
We're not going to be spending 75 cents of our dollar south. We'll be amortizing that money out in Canada where we can, and then spending it in other places where we have to.
The agency aims to cut red tape and duplication. It will aim to prioritize selecting Canadian companies on big contracts valued at more than $100 million for equipment like drones, small arms, and shipbuilding. But there are no targets for how much less they want to spend on American weapons. The first major decision the agency will make involves procuring up to a dozen new submarines to replace Canada's aging fleet. But the minister says the purchase of more F-35s from the U.S. is still under review. Canada could buy fighter jets from Sweden instead.
There's no pressure on us to make a decision until we're ready to make a decision. We're a sovereign country.
The slow play comes as trade talks drag on. Before a Senate committee, the country's top negotiator tempered expectations.
Resolvable might mean going back to where we were a year ago. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I think we can be in a lot better position over time than we find ourselves in today.
The federal government also wants to use these big procurement contracts as leverage to encourage foreign companies to set up manufacturing here while increasing market access for Canadian companies overseas. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
Meanwhile, the federal government has updated its travel advice for those traveling to the United States with a cautionary note about gender-neutral passports. The advisory is warning while Canada issues passports with an X marker for people who don't identify as strictly male or female, entry or transit through other countries, including the U.S., cannot be guaranteed for travelers using that designation. The statement goes on to warn travelers may be asked to provide their sex or gender information as either male or female. A dire warning tonight for Canada Post. The Federation of Independent Businesses is saying the agency risks losing nearly 2/3 of its small business customers if the workers' strike continues. The CFIB says last year's strike cost small businesses more than $1 billion. 13% of those surveys have stopped using Canada Post since that disruption. And the organization says nearly 2/3 of all respondents say they'd also switch shipping providers if another strike happened. The latest job action was launched after the federal government announced a major overhaul of Canada Post to address its troubled finances. Overseas, British police are calling the attack in Manchester, England, an act of Ready? Overseas, British police are calling the attack in Manchester, England, an act of terror. Authorities there saying a man drove a car into a crowd at a synagogue, then began stabbing people. CTV's Heather Wright now on the fear and heightened security at synagogues everywhere.
On this, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, an attack at a synagogue. Police say a man wearing what appeared to be an explosive vest first drove a car into people gathered outside a temple in Manchester, England, then got out of his car and attacked others with a knife. He was then shot dead by police while trying to get inside the building. 2 people were killed, 4 others injured.
We shouldn't be scared to feel or believe in what we believe.
The attack has been deemed an act of terror and occurred in an area of Manchester home to many Orthodox Jews. It comes at a time of heightened fears in the Jewish community and rising anti-Semitism around the world. The man suspected of carrying out the attack has been identified as 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami. 3 other people have been arrested as well on suspicion of commission, preparation and instigation of acts of terrorism and remain in custody.
I'm already able to say that additional police assets are being deployed to synagogues across the country, and we will do everything to keep our Jewish community safe.
Here at home, security has also increased outside of synagogues. Toronto Police announced last month they would increase patrols throughout the high holidays, as well as during the lead up to the 2-year anniversary of the Hamas attacks of October 7th.
Scary times, obviously, okay, and it's crazy. It's crazy. This cannot continue. If you can always justify our murder, then it doesn't stop.
Today, Prime Minister Mark Carney called the Manchester synagogue attack an appalling anti-Semitic atrocity, vowing we will always protect the inalienable rights of Jewish communities to live their lives free from intimidation and threats of violence. And despite the increased security, there is a fear within the Jewish community, a concern that what happened in England could happen here. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
All right, sunny, chilly, and windy, but all around a nice fall day across the Peace region. Stay tuned. Noah will be right back with weather.